Not all specs in Project Epoch are created equal, some have been showered with love pre-launch, and others are basically untouched. In this video, we're going through every spec and placing them in a tier list, not for strength or weakness, but for how much attention they've gotten from the dev team so far. Maybe you've played on the anniversary servers or season of discovery for a while, and now you just want a class that feels new again, something fresh that actually gets you excited to push for level 60. That's exactly the lens I'm looking through here. Everything here is subject to change, and we fully expect the team to make adjustments once the server's been live for a while and there's real gameplay data to work with. I'm focusing on specs rather than classes as a whole, because in Classic, spec identity is much stronger than in later versions, and with dual spec costing 1000 gold, most players won't have that luxury early on. Your spec choice will matter, and in many cases the biggest changes are tied directly to specific specs, not the class in general. I also think this will be a fun one to revisit in the future to see how everything changes after launch. Let's start with Shamans. Elemental Shaman is in a much better place now. Molten Blast at level 14 gives you a fire-based alternative to Lightning Bolt that also refreshes Flame Shock, solving that old immunity problem. The new totem bar and Call of the Elements mean you can drop 4 totems instantly, and with raid-wide totems like Wind Fury, Wrath of Air, and Mana Spring, you're bringing a ton of value. The downside is that raid-wide totems could mean fewer shamans per raid slot. Still, Elemental feels polished and more flavorful than before. For me, that's S tier for developer attention. Enhancement Shaman's Wind Fury weapon now has a 36% proc rate, which is a real boost for two-handers and helps close the gap with dual wielding. Primal wielding stops Lightning Bolt and Molten Blast from resetting your swing timer and halves their damage if you cast right after a swing, so hybrid weaving feels smoother instead of scuffed. Shamanistic Rage now returns mana based on your attack power and weapon speed with a guaranteed proc. You still get the totem bar and raid-wide support on top. The spec feels more flexible, balanced, and raid-friendly. That's A tier for developer attention. Restoration Shaman benefits from all the same totem improvements, plus raid-wide Mana Spring, Healing Stream, Wrath of Air, and Strength of Earth. Nature's Guardian gives you a bit of survivability, and Water Shield now has multiple ranks starting at level 28. It's smoother, less clunky, and more useful, but there's nothing flashy or game-changing here. I'd put Resto in B tier for now, since it feels like a spec the devs might revisit later. Balanced Druid gets plus 5% base damage to Wrath and Starfire. They also gains Wildkin Frenzy in Moonkin form, giving you a chance to get plus 5% spell damage, plus 10% attack power, and full spell pushback immunity for 8 seconds when you take direct damage. Balance sees Lunar Guidance increase to up to 30%, up from 25%, and it now also grants up to 9% total intellect. Celestial Focus reduces Starfire pushback, and Moonglow now also reduces Hurricane's mana cost. Balance benefits from Force of Nature control with a pet bar and 90% pet avoidance, and Moonkin Aura is raid-wide with its reduction only affecting other players, not you. They keep the class utility improvements like Consumables in Form and Gift of the Wild raid-wide, but overall receives fewer systemic overhauls than Feral, so this lands at B tier on dev attention. Feral Druid is getting real, practical love. From around level 10, every weapon actually powers your cat and bear damage because Feral attack power now shows up on everything. You can pop potions while shapeshifted, pick up polearms, and weapon on hit effects finally work in form. Furor gives you 60 energy or 15 rage the moment you shift, so your opener is smooth without relying on old helm tricks. Tiger's Fury lasts 18 seconds and ramps as your bleeds tick, stacking up to 10 for extra bite, and both Rake and Lacerate now count as bleeds, so the whole kit feeds that plan. Leader of the pack is raid-wide for 2% crit to the group and 3% to you. Barkskin is also off the global cooldown. That is a big upgrade list, so I'm calling Feral S tier. Restoration Druid gets exactly the tools you want for real group healing. Omen of Clarity is now passive, so free casts roll in naturally without you fishing for procs. Overgrowth gives you a clean emergency button. It cuts the global cooldown on your next 5 rejuvenations by 1 second, costs no mana, and its 1 minute cooldown only starts after you spend those 5 charges. Tranquility is raid-wide now and heals up to 5 players each tick, always leaning toward the most injured, so it actually stabilizes groups. Gift of the Wild is raid-wide for painless buffing, and you still have the nice class perks like using consumables in form and having revive for out-of-combat pickups. Put it all together and you have smoother mana, faster spot coverage, and smarter raid healing. Restoration Druid goes into the A tier. Arcane Mage feels like a full kit refresh. Arcane Barrage is trainable early, Arcane Blast is in the talent tree so you can level as Arcane sooner, and missiles now play nicer with Barrage for bursty finishes. Rune of Power adds a clean 10% damage window if you're willing to plant, and Slow now works on snare immune targets by cutting attack and cast speed with a 2-minute CD in that specific case. Toss in Ritual of Refreshment and the fun Conjure weapon, and it's obvious Arcane got a ton of love, which is why I'll put it in S tier. Fire Mage didn't get as much as Arcane, but Pyroclastic Burst adds some stacking burst potential to Pyroblast, and Master of Elements now works with Arcane spells, giving Fire a little more cross-school synergy. Molten Armor can now also trigger impact from the talent tree. It's a nice touch, but not a massive change, so I'd say C tier. Frost Mage benefits from Frostbite now considering enemies frozen even if they're immune, which is great for uptime on Shatter combos. Piercing Ice triples its effect against fire immune targets, which is actually a big win for Molten Core style encounters. It's solid and targeted, however nothing big, so I'd put it at B tier. Holy Paladin now has access to raid-wide auras and blessings, plus Seal of Dedication at level 46 for some cleave damage if you want to get aggressive. Overwhelming Light is a nice boost to your group healing potential, helping shore up your AoE healing without changing your single target strength. There's also quality of life stuff like Holy Shock having more range when used on allies and a shorter cooldown. All that makes Holy feel better rounded without breaking its core playstyle, so I'd give it a solid B tier. Protection Paladin really benefits from Avenge's shield being instant cast and cheaper on mana. With raid-wide auras and the racial seal system, there's more flavor and utility too. It's not a radical overhaul, but it does make prot smoother and a bit more exciting to play. I think that's B tier for dev attention. Retribution Paladin might actually be the biggest winner here. Crusader Strike now does holy damage instead of physical, so no more being reduced by armor, and it scales with spell power. You've got new racial seals like Seal of the Mountain for dwarves and Seal of Penitence for undead, giving each race some unique flavor. Seal of Dedication gives you cleave potential, and you still get the raid-wide aura and blessing upgrades. That's easily S tier for me. Discipline Priest gets a massive utility cooldown with Power Word Barrier, giving you a raid-wide absorption bubble that scales with player count. Divine Spirit is now baseline, and Inner Fire gets more charges when talented. It's still discipline at its core, but Barrier is a big enough addition to bump it to A tier. Holy Priest got smarter talent placement for smite builds. Lightwell's healing ticks faster and is less punishing to use, and Holy Fire's dot is much stronger. These changes make Holy smoother and a bit more flexible without redefining the spec. I'd put Holy in B tier. Shadow Priest unfortunately feels like it got the least amount of love. There's nothing truly exciting or identity shaping here, and with other specs getting big toys, Shadow is looking a bit left behind. This one goes straight to D tier for developer attention. Assassination Rogue picks up clear wins. Mutilate no longer needs you behind the target. Envenom now boosts poison application for 1 second per dose and benefits from vile poisons. And deadly poison base damage is up 5%. Vigor adds 20 extra energy and 10% faster regeneration. Redirect is baseline at level 42 and works in stealth. And Poisoned Knife lets throw or deadly throw apply your offhand poison. I'm calling that a confident B tier for dev attention. Combat Rogue leans into new toys and cleaner upkeep. Axes are trainable and axe specialization applies a bleed equal to 100% weapon damage, while Slice and Dice extends by 1 second every time you deal bleed damage. Redirect working in stealth keeps your combo points alive on swaps, and Shiv can proc combat potency for on-demand energy. That reads as a clear A tier on attention. Subtlety Rogue gets practical fixes that make the kit dependable. Redirect now works while stealthed, so you can bank and move points. Cheat Death scales off dodge and show its cooldown on you, and it will not trigger if the killing blow is more than double your max health. Shiv can proc combat potency again and vanish correctly, drops its buff when you leave stealth. Overall, that lands subtlety in a steady B tier. Arms Warrior. Let's be real, the big headline is Bladestorm. This is the kind of ability that makes you log in just a spin to win in every battleground. The improved Mortal Strike effect is now baseline. Combine it with some smoother talent progression and you've got a spec that's finally flashy as well as functional. With the addition of Bladestorm, I have to place arms in S tier. Fury Warrior gets smaller but welcome polish. Deathwish and Sweeping Strikes have swapped positions in the trees to smooth your pathing. Bloodthirst's healing stacks now apply after the hit so you don't instantly consume one, and Rampage has a clearer visual so it's easier to track in combat. Class changes applies here too. Your shouts are raid wide, and Victory Rush can chain off its own kills. Good quality of life, but no flashy new button which places it in C tier for developer attention. Protection Warrior picks up practical tools that matter in dungeons and raids. Improved Taunt now boosts range by 7 yards at rank 1 and 15 yards at rank 2, which is huge for tagging loose mobs. Devastate recognizes a rogue's exposé armor as if it were 5 stacks of Sunder and will not overwrite it, so you keep full synergy instead of fighting your debuffs. You also benefit from raid-wide shouts for easy group coverage, Victory Rush chaining for faster leveling cleanup. These are tangible quality of life upgrades for the day-to-day tank job. The BS tank of classic World of Warcraft is now even better. I think the changes deserves A tier grade. Affliction Warlock gets clear damage gains. Unstable Affliction hits harder and scales better. Nightfall can now proc from Seed of Corruption. Improved Corruption shortens Seed's cast. Empowered Corruption boosts Corruption scaling and helps Seed detonate sooner. Shadow Embrace is a clean 3-point pick, and Improved Shadow Bite feeds your Fellhunter mana for Dark Pact. Net result, more throughput and smoother dot flow. I'd rank Affliction B tier for dev attention. Demonology Warlock doubles down on pets. Demonic Empowerment gives real unique buffs to almost every demon. Imp gets guaranteed Firebolt crits and free casts. Succubus gains a dodge window. Felguard gets a damage boost. Infernal is briefly immune. Doomguard fires a volley. Soul Link now correctly boosts pet damage. Your demons matter more and feel more active. That reads as a solid B tier. Destruction Warlock tightens control and synergy. Shadow Fury's stun lasts longer. The Shadow vulnerability bug on improved Shadow Bolt is fixed. Improved Firebolt makes Firebolt cheaper and lets Imp crits buff your next single target fire spell. Rain of Fire can crit. With Bane split from curses, you can keep one of each up. Cleaner play with better payoffs. I'm placing Destruction in B tier. Beast Mastery leans hard into the pet fantasy. More families are tameable and useful, with simple focus spenders and clear utility. And Ferocious Inspiration is raid-wide so your group always feels your buff. Pet stat handling is tidied up and movement is consistent, so what you train and bring actually matters. That's meaningful, hands-on attention to BM. I'm putting Beast Mastery in A tier. Marksmanship takes a couple of tuning hits but gains some quality of life stuff. Multi-Shot's arc is wider so it chains more reliably, and True Shot aura coverage is raid-wide even with rank 3 removed. With a disengage standardized for everyone, your movement plan is still solid. I'd place Marksmanship in B tier. Survival picks up day-to-day fixes. Traps behave the way you expect and Snake Trap engages promptly. Explosive Trap's damage over time no longer scales with ranged power, which is a small pullback, but Expose Weakness behaves like it did in Burning Crusade and Feign Death logic is clearer. The kit feels tidier in dungeons and raids. Survival reads as a B tier on dev attention. And that's the list. Remember, this isn't about min-maxing for world first, it's about picking a spec that feels new enough to keep you excited for the full journey to 60. If you've been looking for a reason to try something outside your usual picks, now's a great time. And hey, if you enjoyed this breakdown, please consider subscribing to the channel. We are on our way to 500. It really means a lot and helps more than you might think. Drop a comment with your main and what changes you want to see next. Until next time, take care.